You are listening to Claret and Blue, an Aston Villa podcast brought to you by Birmingham Live.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Claret and Blue podcast. Today I'm joined by Alasdair Gold, Football.London's Tottenham correspondent. Alasdair, how's things?
Yeah, all good. As good as it can be, covering Tottenham Hotspur. They like to throw up a few little kind of twists and turns as the season goes on, and they've started that already. But other than that, all good.
It was all rosy a few weeks ago. Nuno, manager of the month, and everything was fine, but it just shows you how quickly it can turn. And what's the feeling amongst the fans at the moment after the North London derby? Is it a bit unrest at the moment?
Yeah, just a bit. Yeah, as you say, that's football, isn't it? Very much going from manager of the month. 3 weeks ago, I think he was named to. Now some fans will tell you he's the worst manager of the month. But that's football, and it certainly is the way with Tottenham for some reason. And last night was a little bit better for Tottenham, but after North London derby, I think he's got to win a lot of fans back. 3 defeats, 3 derbies, 3 goals conceded in each of them. Hasn't been a good few weeks for Tottenham.
No, it hasn't. And obviously Villa come to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium on Sunday, 2:00, full of confidence. Alasdair won at Old Trafford at the weekend, second time in my lifetime, and things are buoyant at the moment. And the shadow of Jack Grealish is long gone, and Villa built a really good team here, and it's not the same among Spurs at the moment. I mean, Harry Kane got a hat-trick last night, we know, in Europe, and has he been firing of late? I mean, what's the issue there with Harry?
Yeah, he's... Last night, I think Spurs fans will be hoping that's a good sign. There was maybe he looked very sharp. It was only about 20 minutes or so his hat-trick, but he's very much... There's been a hangover, there's no getting around it. There's been a hangover from losing with England in the final, a transfer window where, let's be honest, he wanted to move on and it didn't happen. Now he's kind of set his focus back on Tottenham, but I think he's playing catch-up with his fitness, his sharpness, just getting his head around being a Tottenham Hotspur player still, I think, as well. And he's scoring goals in the Cups. I mean, he's got 6 goals in 9 games, which doesn't look too bad, but ultimately it's 5 Premier League games and 0 goals within that. So it's kind of a bit of a false picture it's painting. Last night was probably exactly what he and Tottenham needed. He'll come into Sunday, at the same ground, a little bit more confident, certainly. Just, muscle memory of scoring goals again is always a good thing. But yeah, it's Aston Villa, and we know exactly what happened with Aston Villa last season at the end of the season, and there was some ugly scenes among the fans after that match last season. So Spurs will certainly get a much sterner test than they did against Enes Moura last night.
Yeah, I felt sorry for Ryan Mason that night. He got some stick as well. Very ugly scenes, like you say. I mean, Kane scored 7 against 8 against Villa, and he likes playing against Villa, Kane. And I mean, Villa released a challenge of stopping him at the weekend. If he's playing well, how can Villa stop him? I mean, seen a few notes overnight. If you get Kane in the box, he's a goal scorer. When he drops deep, that's when the problems arise. I mean, what's your stance on that?
Yeah, it's. I think a lot of the problem around Kane has probably been the creativity around him hasn't been there this season. They've probably still never replaced Christian Eriksen fully, and he left 18 months ago or so. And that's why you see Kane drop that little bit deeper to try and become a bit of everything, become a bit of a striker and a playmaker all rolled into one, which it certainly worked at times last season. He won the awards, didn't he? The Premier League top scorer award and also the playmaker award for the most assists, so he can do it. But the problem is, if he is going to do that, then everyone else has to be a willing runner around him. So you need a Son or a Lucas to be bombing into the box to take advantage of whatever Kane then does with the ball. And that's been Spurs' big problem, is they keep using this expression. Nuno Espirito Santo keep using it. Hugo Lloris used it after North London derby about players being too far away from each other. They switched to this 4-3-3 under Nuno, which had some success early in the season. First 3 games, they won all of them 1-0. But I think they're finding as they go on that with those 3 banks of players, they're just becoming more and more separated. And last night, for the first time, he went for a 4-2-3-1, which has been Tottenham's go-to formation in recent seasons. And look, you've got to have the massive caveat of it being probably the lowest ranked team Spurs are going to face in that competition, the Slovenian side Moura. But it just got players further up the pitch, and there was less space in terms of between Spurs lines. And even Dele Alli has been playing in a deeper midfield role, whereas last night he was pushed up, and within 3 minutes, won a penalty, scored the penalty. And I think that's what Kane needs. He needs willing runners around him, people that are going to be close to him, get into the box, and that's what can hurt Villa. But ultimately, I can only point again to last season, and Villa know what to do when they come into Tottenham Hotspur Stadium.
Look, it's pointed towards a 4-2-3. Well, I think Carragher ripped the midfield to bits last Sunday. Two strikers, Ollie Watkins and Danny Ings. I think there's transfer interest in both of them from Spurs on Spurs' behalf. Villa acted on it on both occasions. And what have you liked from them, Pay? I mean, Watkins is yet to score this season, but he's back in the England setup. As for Danny Ings, he's got 2 goals, 2 assists from his first 6 games, proven goal scorer. Are Tottenham looking to regret that, given Kane's form, or what do you know about them, Pay, and the interest?
Yeah. 100% regret. That has to be there because Spurs have always had this problem, and it's a big Harry Kane-shaped problem in that whoever you want to try and bring in knows that Spurs are probably never going to switch to a front 2, and if they do, it's Son up front with Kane. With no disrespect to any other strikers out there, Son and Kane are probably one of the best partnerships in the Premier League. They are. Their numbers last season showed that once again. So Spurs will never pay what they might feel is over the odds for a striker. So they looked at Ollie Watkins and they had a serious look at him because Spurs had big problems with homegrown numbers as well. So he was perfect solution. But, as soon as the price started to get to that 30 million mark, they just drifted away. And they don't like to compete in terms of for players like that for some reason. And I think that's gone on to be shown to be I say a wrong decision, but whether Watkins himself would have chosen to come to a team where he would have sat on the bench, he may well not have decided that anyway. And the same with Danny Ings, another player that Spurs have really looked at, really like him. And there was even some indications that he might have liked the move to Tottenham. But I think personally, he's probably made the better move for his own career, I think, with Villa as well. Because, I'm intrigued to see how they work as a partnership going forward, Watkins and Ings. I mean, how have they paired up so far in the opening matches?
Yeah, they're still working on the understanding, Alasdair. He's quite new to Watkins. I mean, Danny Ings played in a 2 at Southampton continuously last season. As Watkins, you can still, there's little bits testing it down to each other and then not going to the return pass. They're still building on their understanding, but these with trust with them off the ball, the force defenders into mistakes, the relentless pressures, the pair of them, and that's where Tottenham could come unstuck at the weekend. If you dally around with the ball at the back, your Romeros and whatnot, then Villa were up to pounce, and they got success out of that with Reguilon at the end of last season, didn't they, with the own goal and whatnot. So, yeah, I think Villa looked to press from the front. That sets the tone for Villa. And like I say, they're still working on their understanding. So, hopefully, Ollie Watkins gets amongst the goals first of the season Sunday. Big Arsenal fan as well, so he'll want to score there. But, I'll chuck some stats at you because we're big on stats here. I mean, Villa have hired a set piece coach this season. It's working a real treat. I think other clubs are going to follow suit in that too distant future. Spurs have conceded 30 shots from set pieces, second highest in the Premier League. So that's a weakness Villa will look to jump on. No team has had less shots from open play than Spurs as well. So a bit toothless up front, like you say, with the creativity issue. And announced this week, Spurs have covered the least ground as well in the Premier League. So not running for Nuno. So, I mean, there's issues there. I mean, you look down in the dumps now, Alice, they're talking about Spurs, but it doesn't bode well, does it?
No. I think for me, the biggest stat was that last one. And I've written about that kind of in recent weeks. For Nuno, his big thing at Wolves was that he had a really fit team, a team that did a lot of running, covered a lot of ground, and they worked incredibly hard. And for him to see the stats that shows that they're the lowest in the Premier League for covering distance on a pitch, I think that will probably sting him more than anything because it just shows a lack of application, a lack of, I think probably also an understanding where each other needs to be on the pitch. I mean, Dele Alli said last night, and he's right, that Spurs have had a lot of problems in the last few years. And anyone that thought that Nuno was going to come in and click his fingers and everything was going to be fixed, it just wasn't going to be the case whatsoever. But I just think the style of play has worried the Spurs fans. Daniel Levy, the Spurs chairman, made this big promise. Funnily enough, I think it was in the programme notes for the Villa game, about he was going to go out there and he was going to bring in a new manager who would play this attractive, entertaining and free-flowing football. And I think it was probably the worst thing he could have come out with because then the whole manager search got defined by that. And then ultimately took a big twist when Fabio Paratici came in, the new managing director of football from Juventus, and wanted a different kind of manager. He wanted a more balanced manager. And that's what he's got in Nuno. And I think the fans were worried. The fans were suddenly concerned that, oh my goodness, we're not going to get our Tottenham way, or whatever they want to call it, of football. And after the first 3 games, 1-0, you can take it when you're winning. That's absolutely fine. And against Man City, they played well after the first 20 minutes or so. But then to see this continued kind of inability in front of goal in the Premier League, and like I say, 3 derby defeats is a real kind of punch to the gut, I think, for what Nuno's trying to do as well. It's been a strange couple of weeks. They've kind of had real highs and lows all squeezed in, and the international break was an absolute disaster for Tottenham. They lost 3 players to isolation, the South American players. Obviously, Aston Villa know about that as well with Wendy and Martinez. And then they also lost another 4 players, I think it was, to injury. And then Eric Dyer, the match after international break, then got himself injured. Yeah, it's been a tough time. Throw in the Kane saga, throw in Tongi and Dembele wanting to leave as well and not getting a move. And Nuno's had a tough old task on his hands. He really has, Jose Mourinho did some good things, but he also left the club that had already, to be fair to him, was fractured after Pochettino's departure. I think Nuno's trying to piece everything back together again, but he's going to need time. But, you and I both well know in football, just do you get that time nowadays?
Yeah. We did a piece a couple of days ago now. Villa cashing on Grealish. They didn't want to. £100 million. They reinvested that. Leon Bailey, brilliant signing. And they're looking, obviously it's gone the other way with Kane. He stayed a bit unhappy. Uncertain summer, and Spurs are suffering for that at the moment in time. But I think Spurs, Villa, and Dean Smith keeps mentioning Tottenham and your Evertons and your Leicesters. Villa want to get leapfrog them. So Spurs are a bit struggling at the moment. I think Villa want to send out a statement at the Tottenham Hotspur on Sunday and think we're back amongst this group. 10 years ago they were competing on the top 6, top 4 level, and I think Villa are back amongst it now. So. Is that a worry for Spurs if they're going to drift down and others will catch them? Leicester already have done, and people like that. Is that a concern amongst the club?
Yeah, I think so. Spurs under Poch were, 4 years in a row top. They were certainly 3 years in a row top 3. Finished second one of those. They were 4th in his last full season as well, and they've absolutely plummeted down down the table. Say plummeted. There's probably a slight exaggeration. We're not talking, mid-table or lower reaches or anything. But in terms of where they were, they're right out of the Champions League. They're playing in the Europa Conference League, which for Tottenham Hotspur in recent history, 2 years ago and being in a Champions League final, it's so poor. It really is. It's a very different competition, of course. I think Aston Villa, they're doing everything the right way, and you can see that. I've got to admit, on a personal level, I love going to Villa Park. It's one of my favourite grounds. It's one of those kind of traditional grounds. But you can see on the pitch, that they're trying to get back to where they were as well. And they're doing a lot of right things. And you can definitely draw parallels maybe between what they've done with Grealish. Perhaps for them it could be a little bit like Liverpool and Coutinho, that one move where nobody really wanted it to happen, but they may be able to make the best out of that bad situation and create a more even squad. Something that kind of suits them better for the long term. Some people maybe were saying the same with Harry Kane at Tottenham. I think it's probably more difficult for Tottenham to lose an out-and-out goal scorer who brings you so many goals. You probably can't replace that quite as easily because, certainly Tottenham have proved bringing in strikers from abroad into the Premier League doesn't always bring success at all. Spurs have had a lot of duds up front. I think Spurs should be worried about Villa. They're doing a lot of good things. Dean Smith, I think. Do you know what? I was really surprised that Dean Smith was never, and I'm sorry to say this to Villa fans, but I was really surprised he was never in the talk about Tottenham's new manager. I really did, because I think he's done that good a job.
Interesting.
And especially, ending up with Nuno, who, certainly last season, with Wolves and Villa, you could look at how Villa did compared to Wolves and everything. And I was surprised he was never mentioned. I really was. And obviously, great news for Villa, as you can see.
Yeah.
I think Spurs should be worried about Villa. I think they're building towards something, and like I say, they do stuff in the right way as well. I like to see football clubs like that.
Yeah, nice one. I'll just run through for those watching. I think my predicted line. I think it'd be as you were last week. It'd be Martinez in goal. I think it'd be a back 3, Alasdair. I think it'd be Konsa, Courtney Horse, and Tyrone Mings. Wing backs have been, the new system is suiting the wing backs down to a T. Matty Cash especially. He'll be on the right hand side, Matt Targett on the left, and then the midfield three, John McGinn. He's been outstanding this season. Scored on the opening day against Tottenham a couple of years ago, and he's coming into his own now. Douglas Luiz and Jacob Ramsey in there. He's just been called up to the under 21 side as well, and then up front to be a twosome. Yeah, Danny Ings and Ollie Watkins, two-player Spurs, were interested in signing, so they'll be looking to haunt Tottenham at the weekend, and we'll see. What's your predicted lineup for Spurs? Alasdair, how will they line up? Will it be a 4-3-3 again, or back to the tried and trusted?
I'd hope for him. I'd hope he sticks with the 4-2-3-1 now after last night. I don't think the 4-3-3 is getting the best out of the players. Last night and in the second half against Arsenal, a couple of players kind of made their claims. Oliver Skipp in particular, another England under-21 international. Yeah. He's probably been one of Spurs' best players, but for some reason was dropped from the starting lineup for the North London derby, and Spurs just didn't have that bite. They didn't have that kind of guy in the middle who knows what a derby's about. So I imagine he'll come back in. So if they're going for a 4-2-3-1, you're probably going to have Lloris in goal, Reguilon at left back. I think he'll probably go for maybe Dyer and Romero at the back. Right back would be an interesting one, whether he goes for Japhet Tanganga, a little bit more of a defensive right back. He likes to do that because then it allows him to have like a back three in possession.
Yeah.
And then the midfield two will probably be Højbjerg and Skipp. And then it's big decisions, really, who plays behind Kane, because you're going to have Lucas and Son. But the big kind of issue is, I think, is going to be that number 10 role, because Dele isn't not a natural number 10. He's a support striker. He can play that. He's been playing a deeper role. But as your kind of creative player in a number 10, it's not what he really does. Whereas Lo Celso, as soon as Dele went off last night, Lo Celso moved into a number 10 role, and he was superb. But obviously, it's NS Laura. You can't get too carried away. So I think the decision there is going to be between Ali, Lo Celso, and Tanguy Ndombele, who's had a mixed season. He's been okay. He was pretty awful against Arsenal, as Jamie Carragher kind of pointed out. All the midfield were. So yeah, I think pretty much every point in that team is probably set, apart from that number 10. And to be honest, it's probably the most crucial decision he's got, because they need to create. Otherwise, it's going to be another tough day.
Yeah, we'll wrap things up now. I think I can see Villa winning. The momentum's massive at the moment, and just going into this international break as well. Just how important is the result for Nuno? If he loses, does the pressure crank up, and will it be too much, or will his job be on the line, or will a point see him through it? I mean, how are you seeing the results at the weekend? In
front of what probably will be a full house, or certainly at least 60,000 in there. I think Spurs have to get the win. I think they do after recent results. Probably at the least give a performance that shows everyone that they're turning the corner properly. I think they need to get a win. Otherwise, it becomes a very uncomfortable and awkward international break. It really does. It's very early. And anyone with a sane, logical mind probably wouldn't be looking at changing their manager after 7 Premier League games. But it's the way the Premier League is, and the way Tottenham can be as well. Who knows? Who knows?
Alasdair, thanks for joining, Mr. Tottenham Hotspur. I'll see you on Sunday. Hope for a good game, and we'll see what happens, see what pans out. So thanks again. Thanks to those who listened along and watched along. And we'll be back next week for the international break as well. And thanks for joining.
Thank you for listening to Claret and Blue, an Aston Villa podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, then please do let us know. We love hearing your feedback. We'll be back soon with another episode. But until then, up the Villa.